right, if you would please stand with me tonight and turn to hymn number 166. Hymn 166, At the Cross. We'll sing all 4 verses tonight of At the Cross. Alas, and did my Savior bleed, and did my sovereign die? Would he devote that sacred head for such a worm as I? At the cross where I first saw the light, and the burden of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight, and now I am happy all the day. Was it for crimes that I have done? He groaned upon the tree. Amazing pity, grace unknown, and love beyond degree. At the cross where I first saw the light, and the burden of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight, and now I am happy all the day. Well might the sun in darkness hide, and shut his glories in, when Christ the mighty Maker died for man, the creature's sin. At the cross where I first saw the light, and the burden of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight, and now I am happy all the day. But drops of grief can ne'er repay the debt of love I owe. Here, Lord, I give myself away. 'Tis all that I can do. At the cross where I first saw the light, and the burden of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight, and now I am happy all the day. Good singing, you may be seated.
Amen. Well, good evening. Man, we've got guests and it still is like crazy small. But I'm glad you were able to make it tonight. It's a beautiful day. It's a great day to be in the Lord's house. And regardless of how many are here, and thankful for people that are able to take vacation and spend time with their families and get away. Thankful for that. The Farinellas are out sick, just starting to feel ill. You know, isn't that the case? You get back from vacation and then you start to get sick. But grateful for the opportunity to be in the Lord's house tonight. So just announcements, right? 8th through the 10th, what is it? Family camp. Okay, so here's the deal. Even if you told me that you wanted to go earlier when we talked about reserving space, come and see me if you're going to go, so that I can plan that and make sure we're good. And again, cost is $40 plus the parking or entrance fee for Mount Rainier, right? And I heard it was about $30. I don't know, so we'll have to look that up. It'll be a good time. Yeah, it's just us and Foundation. So we're going together with Foundation, and it'll be fun. Also, September 15th, anniversary Sunday. So we've been here 3 years. Praise the Lord for that. God's graciousness and His goodness. And so a special treat, we've got Brother Tim Schellenberger coming to preach. And all day we'll have a potluck and an afternoon service, not an evening service, okay? So mark that on the calendar if you haven't already. And September 15th, no evening service. We'll go straight into an afternoon service after the potluck. And so those are really our announcements. Now, I threatened Viv and Abby, right, to give testimonies tonight. Viv, because her parents are sick, isn't here. Reese, because he's with his parents vacationing, is not here. So I'm still going to have you give a testimony, Abby. So you get to do that. And maybe next week we'll have Viviana and Reese give testimonies in the evening service. So we just had our junior camp, and 18 campers saved. Praise the Lord for that. Maybe Abby, you could come and give a testimony just of camp, so that we can see you. You're not behind the pulpit. Yeah, just do it.
Camp was really good. The preaching was really good. They had a different preacher, which I thought was a really good preacher, and he really spoke to me. But my decision was that I would be nicer to my siblings and just be patient, and it was really nice to have Miss Leah there.
Amen.
So then do we get to ask your siblings?
Whether that's, yeah, what's the accountability structure on that? Man, I'm not preaching tonight, so of course I always want to preach. But I will say, and I think I said this when I came back from senior camp, camp's awesome, just like preaching and services. And having the Lord speak to you through the preaching is wonderful. It should happen, by the way, and it should happen regularly if you're open to having God speak to you. That's awesome, but also we ought to make decisions. And it doesn't mean that you're always going to make good on those decisions. It doesn't mean that every day you're going to be able to live that out, but it does mean that you would take what God has done in your heart, right, and that you would seek through His Holy Spirit to actually do that in your life, rather than, oh yeah, that's really good. I feel convicted, and I'm going to pray about it, but then I'm not going to focus anything in my life and do that. I'm not going to really, in a concerted way, allow the Holy Spirit to work through my life. And so there is this balance, right, of God working in us, but us determining that we're going to allow Him to do that. And we need to do that. And not just campers. It's awesome, right? We saw some great things from our senior campers and now from our junior campers, and that's wonderful. But as much as I'm an advocate for camp, and I always will be, right, adults need the same thing. And it's a little bit harder for us maybe because we don't get to be in an environment like camp, but we need the same thing, and that's why we come to church, and that means we need to make the same type of decisions when God speaks to us. All right, so that's my little sermonette. We're not going to practice our verses. You get the week off unless somebody. I know Miss Kitty's not here. She would be very disappointed if I said, but that way she won't feel left out. So we're good. But I would say continue to work on it. I memorized a boatload of verses for ordination, and I can testify if you don't work on them, you lose them. Right? They don't continue to stay in your memory. You need to continue to work on them. So. When I come back from the hiking trip, we will have another kind of quiz for fun, right? But we'll have another quiz and see how we're doing on that. So with that, why don't we go to another song, Brother Nick?
Stand with me once again, and we'll turn to song number 607. Footsteps of Jesus, all four verses of Footsteps of Jesus, number 607. Sweetly, Lord, have we heard Thee calling, come follow me, and we see where Thy footprints falling lead us to Thee. Footprints of Jesus that make the pathway glow. We will Jesus that make the pathway glow. We will follow the steps of Jesus where'er they go. Then at last when on high he sees us our journey done, we will rest where the steps of Jesus end at his throne. Footprints of Jesus that make the pathway glow. We will follow the steps of Jesus where'er they go. Good singing. You may be seated.
We'll go ahead and get ready for our offering if we didn't have a chance to give this morning. And just one other announcement I forgot to make this morning. During this week, Foundation Baptist Church gets kicked out of the lodge because of the Girl Scouts have a long-standing contract with the lodge there at Beaver Lake. And so they're going to be joining us Wednesday night. Brother Nick is still going to be preaching, and so I'm sure he's loving that. But that's good, right? You'll have more people here, and so we have to figure out how to deal with that with prayer and everything else. But that's for Nick, because I'm going to be on the trail. So just know that Foundation will be joining us on Wednesday. All right, let's go ahead and pray, and we'll just go to the Lord for offering. Lord, I thank you so much for just your beauty. I love living in this area. And Lord, your creation and the weather we've seen today is marvelous. But Lord, even more than that, I thank you for the salvation that you have authored to us and given to us so freely. Lord, that you sought us out, that you redeemed us back to yourself, Lord, and that you desire to do that for everyone and work through us to reach, as we heard this morning through 1 Corinthians, to reach others, Lord. I'm so grateful that you would use us as imperfect individuals. Lord, I pray that you would receive this offering, that you'd be blessed by it. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Just as I am. Hymn 275. Just as I am, without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou bidst me come to thee, O Lamb of God.
So we're going to have teen class tonight. So the question is, I'm wondering, do the teens, it's been a little while, do the teens even remember what the assignment was last time we had it? Abby gets an out because she wasn't there, but the rest we're going to see. I'm guessing not, so we'll do a little review. It's okay. And Brother Nick is going to preach from the book of Judges. And so I just wanted to take as many people out of the service as possible for him. No, I'm kidding. All right. So dismiss the team.
All right. As the teens are leaving, you can turn in your Bibles to Judges chapter 10. Judges chapter 10. We'll be in verses 1 through 5 this week. Judges chapter 10. And we're going to do a little bit of review, but for now we'll just read through the first 5 verses of chapter 10, and then we'll get into the message tonight. So, Judges chapter 10, verse 1. And after Abimelech, there arose to defend Israel Tola, the son of Puah, the son of Dodo, a man of Issachar, and he dwelt in Shamir in Mount Ephraim. And he judged Israel 20 and 3 years, and died, and was buried in Shamir. And after him arose Jair, a Gileadite, and judged Israel 22 years. And he had 30 sons that rode on 30 ass colts, and they had 30 cities, which are called Havoth Jair unto this day, which are in the land of Gilead. And Jair died and was buried in Kaman. Now, it's a small amount of text, and it was challenging this week to get what I was supposed to preach, but I know that the Lord is blessing through this, so I'm going to pray and we'll get into it tonight. Dear Lord, I just thank you for your word and how clear it is, and just the ability that if we're willing to put time in and study, Lord, that you do show us what you say in your word. And Lord, I'm just thankful for the ability to study your word tonight. And I just thank you for the message you've put in my heart. I just pray that you'd use it, help speak only through me. Allow me not to say anything in my own words, just, Lord, speak through me tonight. And I just pray that you'd be with us and help us as we get into it tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. So, if you'll remember, in the book of Judges coming up until this point, we've been through quite a few judges to this point. We've had Barak, Deborah, we've had Ehud, we've had a couple other judges. Well, then we had Gideon. And if we remember the story of Gideon, he was used of the Lord to do great things, but all the way up until the Lord used him to do that great thing, he doubted. And then once he got to do that great thing through only the Lord's power, he took credit for all of it himself. And then he kind of sort of went off on his own, and then from him came Abimelech. And then we've been in the story of Abimelech for the last 4 weeks, 4 messages. And Abimelech was a horrible, wicked king who took all the rest of Gideon's sons and slew them all on the same rock, all 69 of them except for one. And that one son, Jotham, escapes, and then he gets out on the mountain. He foretells of the death of Abimelech and the lapse of his union with Shechem. And then we got to last week where Abimelech eventually, after everything has taken place, Abimelech ends up dying, and we find out that the children of Israel were a part, even just a little bit, but a part of Abimelech's wicked rule. So then that brings us to this week. So last week was all about the judgment of God coming down upon Israel for what they had done, and the movement of Abimelech through the land. And now we get to chapter 10 and verse 1. And it says, and after Abimelech, that arose to defend Israel, kind of one of the purposes of the judges was to defend. And these two that we're going to read about tonight are what they call minor judges, because it's just got a small little account of what they did in the Bible. So it says, and there arose to defend Israel Tola, the son of Puah, the son of Dodo, a man of Issachar, and he dwelt in Shamir in Mount Ephraim. So he's one of the tribe of Issachar, and it says there in verse 2, and he judged Israel 20 and 3 years, and died and was buried in Shamir. So you say to yourself, what can we get out of this? Well, that he judged Israel 23 years, and that he died and was buried in Shamir. So then you continue,
And in verse 3 it says, and after him arose Jair the Gileadite, and judged Israel 22 years. So you got a total here of 45 years of these two men judging. And it says here in verse 4, and he had 30 sons that rode 30 ass colts, and they had 30 cities, which are called Havoth Jair unto this day. So he was a Gileadite. He judged Israel 22 years, and he had 30 sons riding on 30 colts. So the significance to that was that in the time that he ruled as a judge, that he was a judge, the fact that he had 30 sons meant that it was a prosperous time. It wasn't like an oppressive time. He was able to prosper in that he could have 30 sons. And the fact that they rode on the 30 colts meant that they were well off. They had a lot of affluence to their family, and then it compounds on that by saying they had 30 cities. So then it says at the end of that, and he was buried in Kaman. So that's the text. That's the text for this week. Now what I started to do is I was struggling of whether or not to keep going or stop here. But then the Lord brought in the context of the passage, where it's at in the Bible, where it's at in regards to the book of Judges, and what it's sandwiched in between is a horrible king and a judge who messes up pretty bad. So to figure that out, to figure out why this was here, we're going to go back just a little bit, and we breezed over it, but we're going to kind of look at what built up to this point. So during Gideon's judgeship, he had that great victory for the Lord. The Lord comes to him, the angel comes to him and says, "O mighty man of valor," and he's scared. He's scared, and he continues to try and he serves the Lord in tearing down the groves and all that. And then he obeys the voice of the Lord, but then he wants the tests. He does the test of the fleece, and then when he gets there with the men, he does the whoever's scared, leave, and most of the men leave, and then he does the lapping of the water, and men leave there. Well, then he has this great and awesome victory that was all God, where they blow the trumpets, they crash the pitchers, they shout out the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And after this great victory where God takes all the men's swords against each other, he takes credit for it. So we can see the downward slope of Gideon from there. He goes on a rampage, even killing his own countrymen because they stood in the way of his revenge on these men that killed his brothers. And then, even though he rejects it from the Israelites, he establishes his own kingship in that he's got a multiplicity of wives, he's got tons and tons of sons, securing his bloodline for the future generations. And then he's got concubines, he's got riches, he makes the ephod that all of Israel goes a-whoring after. And then he passes off the scene, and his son comes in his place, Abimelech, this horrible, wicked king who takes, as we said, he goes in and he talks to the men of Shechem, and he says, "Would you rather that Gideon's sons rule over you, or someone who's of your own bloodline?" And so he goes into them and asks them to make him king over them. And he does that. He does just that. He's a king over the Shechemites, goes and kills 69 of Gideon's sons, and establishes himself of king of the land. And then when Jotham gets up and preaches to everyone, he says, "You know what? The king that you asked for, this king that you asked for, wicked Shechem, he's going to devour you, and you're going to devour him, and you're both going to perish, and this union is going to end in tragedy because of what you have done to my brothers and my father in that killing of the 69 sons of Gideon." So then everything transpires. Shechem and Abimelech are at odds, and they fight, and then Abimelech begins to go on a bloodlust rampage and just starts going after multiple towns. And then when he goes against Thebez, the woman throws the stone off the roof, hits him in the head, and he falls dead. So then was when we found out that the men of Israel saw that he was dead and departed into his place. So after this time of great judgment, and what would be said in the Bible as a time of great judgment on Israel, we get 45 years of peace. It says nothing of the It says nothing of the spiritual climate of this time. It says nothing of anything else. It wasn't a great time of revival. It wasn't a time of war. It was just simply a time of peace where Tola defends Israel for 23 years, and for 22 years, Jair judges over Israel, and it's a prosperous, it's a wealthy time. So as we get into application, this one's going to be a lot heavier on application. They didn't deserve that, did they? There's no record from the time of Gideon when it says, from the time of Abimelech and Gideon when it says that they went back a-whoring after Balaam and all that. There's no time of repentance here. There's no explicit time where the children of Israel say, Lord, I'm sorry for serving these wicked idols. I'm sorry for following after Abimelech when he did all this. There's no time of that. They didn't deserve the peace. They didn't deserve to be saved from the Midianites, let alone Abimelech. And yet, in the middle of this time of judgment that God's bringing down on the nation of Israel, God gives them an incredible mercy of 45 years of peace. They had sinned against the God. The whole nation was worshiping false gods and idols and had aided to some extent the cause of Abimelech. And in this time of rebellion against God, God still has mercy on them. But in their collective rebellion, today we see that God still has mercy on the world. And each one of us, if we're saved tonight, each one of us has experienced this mercy in our lives. Now, this mercy, the mercy that we see from the Lord here, is kind of an incredible one. So to draw it out, imagine that you have a person who is just out in their life and on accident, by chance, on accident, truly an accident, they end up killing somebody. Whatever the situation may be, they end up killing someone. They go before the court, and the judge decides, you know what, I'm going to let you go. It was an accident. We can all see that. We're going to let you go. But then turn it around, and that same person goes out, and just after he was pardoned of that, he goes out again and intentionally this time kills somebody. Well, now us as humans, us as people, we're like, well, there's got to be some judgment for this. There's got to be something for this. And yet the judge lets him off with the minimum penalty. Let's just say like 5 years. It's extremely merciful for someone who's committed murder. So he spends 5 years and gets out, but this time when he gets out, he goes out on a rampage and just kills multiple people. Any sane person now would just be like, okay, this has got to stop. If you let him go the first time, and now he's on a rampage, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, judge? Yet for some reason, inexplicably to all of us, the judge only lets him off with, again, a minimal sentence. You know, every single day that the world goes about their lives in sin, they don't even realize God's mercy upon their lives. Every single one of us in our sin, we are what put Jesus on the cross. It can't be stated enough that that's what put Jesus on the cross, is our sins. And even though there showed so much mercy in that every single day that a lost person gets outside of God's salvation, saving grace, is mercy in and of itself. But then turning it a little bit, what about those of us who are saved? What about those of us who know better? Though we now know better, and though we know what our sin did to Christ, and though we know that the payment for our sins is immense, we still at times, even as his children, sin against him. When we do, as we talked about last week, God has to judge us because he's a holy and righteous and perfect God. God has to judge us when we sin because he's perfect. He will judge us, and as we went over last week, the only way to avoid that judgment, the only way to avoid the judgment of God is to get right with him, to seek out his face and get right with God. Even though God must judge us, though, what we can see through this passage and the truth that I want to pull out of this passage tonight, and that the Lord really shows Israel in this time, is even though God is a God of judgment, He is still and always will be a God of mercy. We as saved individuals have experienced that mercy in that we are even allowed to be saved. That God would send His only Son I feel like at times we don't get the gravity of that. I mean, none of us would sacrifice any kids. My parents wouldn't sacrifice me for the life of somebody else. Nobody in here that has kids would do that. And yet God Himself sent down His Son to die for us in the ultimate act of mercy so that we wouldn't have to suffer the judgment for our sins for eternity. Every single day that we live and we decide that we want to do things our way instead of God's way, when we know better, when we've been saved from that life, every day when we do that, we're taking for granted God's mercy on our lives. God shows us mercy, and at times, even in my own life, when I wasn't living right, it's weird for me to look back and see the times where there was a peaceful time in my life, if you will, even when I was wrong with God. But to kind of draw that out, in this time, the Israelites were not right with God. They were not right with God, and yet God still showed them His mercy in an effort to pull the Israelites back to Him. You just got done. Think about it. You just got done. Think of it as God saying this. You just got done with a horrible, wicked king who took one of your heroes and killed 69 of his sons. And yet, even though you were aiding this king, and even though you were aiding the atrocities that he was committing, I'm still going to give you peace. But why would God do that? Because God wants to show them that He is a holy and just God, but yet at the same time, He is a God of mercy. He had to judge them because He was holy and just, but He showed them mercy in an effort to bring them back to Him. He has to be hard at times. God has to be hard with us. But the mercy that God shows us, the reason why God shows us mercy, the reason why He showed the Israelites mercy, the reason why He shows mercy for every generation is because He wants to show us proof that He still loves us. Even in His righteous judgment, He still loves us, and He still wants us to come back to Him, and He will always love us. It's a simple message tonight, but God is a God of mercy. And when we realize how much mercy we have been given day to day, our only response should be to, number one, repent of our sins, realizing what it did to Christ. And second, to praise Him for His wonderful mercy every day. That's all we can do when we begin to realize that the only thing that we deserve was death in a place called hell. And yet God had mercy on our lives and loved us so much that He would sacrifice His Son to die for us. The only two responses are to repent from our sins and turn to a God who is waiting there, mercifully loving us throughout all of our rebellion, and praise Him for His wonderful mercy that He shows us every single day. I know it was short, and I know it was a simple message, but I know that the Lord laid this on my heart, and just the thought, and just going throughout my week thinking, man, what has God done? How has God been merciful in my life? I mean, just the fact that I'm standing here today is the mercy and grace of God alone. I should not be here for multiple reasons, and yet God showed mercy on my life to bring me to this point in my life. And every single person, saved or not, has seen a little bit of the mercy of God in their lives. So tonight, as we go out into our week, if you're not saved, and I don't want to take for granted that somebody in here might not be saved, we got to see the amazing work of Wade getting saved at camp. Wade got a big dose of God's mercy. And seeing that refreshed me. It refreshes me to see how joyful Wade is. If you're not saved tonight, and if you're struggling, and you feel like the judgment of God is coming down upon you, get your heart right with God. It was the point of last week, and it's the point of this week. God is merciful, and He will accept you back. Tonight, for those of us that are saved, if we've forgotten it, and I know I've forgotten it so many times, we need to praise God for how merciful He is to us every day. And if we are still sinning against Him, we got to get it right. And even though God is a God of judgment, He is also a God of love and of mercy, and He will accept us back and forgive us. If we confess our sins, He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So as we close tonight, I just want to leave you with that challenge this week. Dear Lord, thank you for the message, Lord. It's simple, it's short. But Lord, it's just a truth that I feel like we neglect, and we just don't grasp all the time the fact that I don't deserve to be standing here, Lord, and I don't deserve the life that you've given me, and yet you showed mercy on my life, and you've given me your grace, and that has put me where I'm at today, Lord, and it's only because your mercy and grace. And so, Lord, I just pray that you'd be with us tonight and help us to take this to heart this week, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. I'll give you a moment to respond. Lord, I thank you so much for this night, and I just thank you for the mercy you've shown me in my own life, Lord, and just the reminder that even in a time of judgment, Lord, you can show your mercy on us in order to draw us back to you, Lord. And so I just pray that you'd be with us and impress that upon our hearts this week, and help us to just go forth in your name this week, Lord, realizing that the same mercy that you showed to us, we can show to everybody else, Lord. And I just pray that you'd be with us this week and help us as we go about our nights tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. You are dismissed.